Hello friends, and welcome to the January 13th edition of Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly opportunity for mainstream Texans of faith to learn about public policy issues here in the great state of Texas and have a conversation about how you can get involved. My name is Scott Adnip, your host and Texas Impact's Outreach Director, and today's episode is being brought to you by Methodist Healthcare Ministries of South Texas. And before we introduce today's guest, I want to take a moment to say that the Texas Impact team and our members are disappointed in the news that came out Friday that Governor Abbott will not allow Texas to resettle refugees. Obviously, Texas faith communities play a major role in resettling refugees here in Texas. They spend a lot of time and resources trying to fulfill their faith calling in that way. Many of you have been responding on social media. I saw an outpouring on Friday night. And Texas Impact is launching a sign-on letter today to amplify your voices. You can find that at texasimpact.org. We hope that you will share that opportunity widely. While we're doing our housekeeping to start the new decade, I want to remind you that the United Methodist Women's Legislative event is coming up January 26th through 28th, and the Texas Impact Interfaith Advocacy Conference will be February 16th through 18th, both in Austin, and both are going to be great events. Registration is online for both at texasimpact.org, so make sure to sign up, and we'll hope to see you in Austin soon. So with all of that being said, we're excited to welcome our first solo guest of the new decade by welcoming Bishop Kathryn Ryan, who is the Bishop Suffragen of the Episcopal Diocese of Texas, where she has been since 2014. Bishop, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's good to be with you.
So we were talking beforehand, and I know you have a passion for refugees and have done a lot of work in that area. We're going to get to that, but I want to lay a foundation to get us started. So the Episcopal Church has a history of justice and advocacy work. I wonder if you could talk some about that history and its biblical foundation.
Well, the Episcopal Church, in its grounding in Scripture, finds its identity in the call to welcome the stranger, to be stewards of all that God has given us and blessing us, and in the call that was made to Abraham to be a blessing to all nations. That those are foundational. And then if you go to Jesus' story about the Good Samaritan, the rich man asks him, "Who is my neighbor?" And Jesus tells the story about the Good Samaritan. And at the end, he asks the man, which one of these was a neighbor to the person in need? And then he says, "Go and do likewise." That our neighborliness is measured not on proximity and not on what people do for us, but on what we do for others. That is, right. Go and be neighbor. And so when you combine the call in Deuteronomy to remember that you were once aliens, right? That we remember that we don't, on our own, live lives of blessing and peace and wellness. We live those lives from God's blessing on us. That we then extend that to help others. That it's that combination of stewarding what we have and responding to those in need. That is who we are in Christ because of what God's done for us.
I will say a very high percentage of religious leaders I ask a variation of this question to respond with that Good Samaritan story. So we're consistent across faith traditions.
It's beyond us too. Absolutely.
So what does that historically look like in the Episcopal tradition? How have y'all lived out that call?
Well, from the frontier and revolutionary days even, there's been that response. There's been the missionary work, both domestically. The Episcopal Church's official title is the Foreign and Domestic Missionary Society, that going out to share God's love and word with others. But the work within the United States really, just in the last century, became very intentional and organized. So for instance, in 1940, there was a significant effort to help begin resettling refugees from the conflict in Europe. And that was formulated into what was called the Presiding Bishop's Fund for World Relief, which then became Episcopal Relief and Development. And so that heart of gathering resources from the churches, dioceses across the country in order to help those in need internationally and then also domestically, has been expressed in response to refugee issues, natural disasters, famine, poverty, all kinds of issues.
Now, refugee issues have certainly been in the news over the course of the last few days here in Texas, but you mentioned that you have a history working with refugees or on these issues. You want to tell us something about that?
Well, so when I was in high school, our church in New Mexico helped resettle a Cambodian refugee family, and so I was invited as a high schooler to be on that committee, and my job was collecting the furniture to furnish the apartment, and that, so it goes way back for me, but I was a rector of Ascension in Dallas, Paul Klitsky's on your board.
Yes, indeed. Hey, Paul. I
was his predecessor, and that was a congregation that was made up of people from a variety of countries, and in 2001, the resettlement of lost boys from Sudan began, and we had a significant ministry to Dinka men first, and then men and women, and then families. And so working with both in the church to be brothers and sisters in Christ, but also connecting them to resources so that they could thrive as American residents and then citizens. Partnered with SMU University, with Highland Park Presbyterian Church, with the Methodists. Is very broad to help. Again, refugees come to our country needing safety, but they also want to live a robust and healthy life, which we can help them do. And that was a blessing to us to have that opportunity to meet, participate with, and become family too.
Yeah, I assume that kind of looked like the kingdom of God on earth in that church at that time. Was it a heavy lift getting the church to that point, or was that kind of in the DNA?
No, it was in the DNA. But it was an amazing thing. There was a Sunday on which, surprising to us, this was not an organized, like, we're going to resettle refugees.
Right.
This was a look out on Sunday morning and have a dozen people you don't recognize who are clearly all in some way related to each other. And after that service, before I, as a priest, could even get out into the narthex, to the entry area, the lay people had surrounded them and were introducing themselves and asking how they got there and what they could do. And within a month, there was a ministry grew up to help them get their GEDs, to learn how to shop in American grocery stores, to apply for jobs, to understand transportation. So it was not a heavy lift. It was an organic response to caring for neighbors.
Yeah, we might be getting off topic here, but I'm just interested because I do know there are a lot of clergy out there who hear that vision and are certainly excited and inspired by that. What advice would you have for clergy who are or people who are in churches where that might not necessarily be in the DNA? What advice would you have for them to kind of get started in that process?
I think making friends.
Yeah.
Right. That it's. Churches often think that they have to invent things that are theirs, but they could just partner with somebody else, right? Especially in Texas, there are churches who have been doing this work for immigrants and refugees for years, and they know some of the pitfalls, they know some of the opportunities, they know so much about how you meet needs, and so you can partner with them and learn, and then people catch the vision, and it becomes easier. So the first idea, if you're interested in that, is make some friends who are already doing it and introduce your people to them so you can hear the stories. There's nothing like actually hearing what people have gone through to get here.
Yeah. So, along those lines, I think we'd all agree that There are churches who are doing refugee resettlement work. There are many nonprofit organizations, many from a faith background, who are doing this work. And the governor on Friday rejected refugee resettlement in Texas in 2020. And the Episcopal Church came out with a statement I'll read just a portion of. You can find this full post on episcopalchurch.org. It was released by the Public Affairs Office. The first paragraph reads, "The Episcopal Church condemns Governor Abbott's decision to reject refugee resettlement in 2020. Texas has long served as a strong partner in the work of welcoming some of the most vulnerable individuals in the world to peace, safety, and a bright future. Texas Episcopalians have also given generously of their time, talents, and treasure to help our refugee brothers and sisters rebuild their lives in a Lone Star State." And it closes by saying, "The Episcopal Church urges Governor Abbott to reconsider his decision and express support for continuing Texas's long tradition of welcoming refugees. Refugee resettlement embodies the Texan spirit and our faithful commitment to assisting the least among us. We encourage all people to stand in the breach for our refugee brothers and sisters who seek a haven of peace and renewal in the United States." So I guess first question is, how do you respond to the Episcopal Church's statement?
Well, we were, the bishops of the Diocese of Texas were given the opportunity to participate in the creation of and the affirmation of the statement, and so we considered our statement too.
Right.
You know, so I respond by saying, "Hear, hear."
Yes.
You know, as a Christian, and as a bishop, I want to say to Governor Abbott's decision, so far as I understand his decision, that both as Christians, we're called to welcome the stranger. Absolutely. And so we do that work in response to the need of our neighbor, but also as a Texan interested in the well-being of our state, the economic well-being, the diversity, the life we have. It is in our best interest to welcome and resettle refugees. We know that one of the factors that impacts whether or not refugees resettle successfully is whether they have access to other people from their communities, from their language groups who have come before. Right? Families support each other. So it's not just the Texas residents who are doing the work, but even those communities. You take the Sudanese, for instance. As new Sudanese came in, the Sudanese community, themselves refugees, were a key factor in helping them succeed. And so for Governor Abbott to do this, it breaks apart work that we have, that Texas Christians and people of other faith communities, frankly, have invested a lot in building the skills and resources and understanding so we do it well.
Right.
And so it's very disappointing and disheartening. Texas is a wealthy, thriving state with a great economy. We have a huge portion of the United States population, and it doesn't make any sense.
Right, and churches and agencies who are wanting to respond.
Absolutely.
So what do you hope, listeners, what do you hope Episcopalians, what do you hope people of faith in Texas will do next?
Well, I hope that they will speak out to, contact the governor's office, contact their state legislators, contact, again, the issue is not just in the state of Texas, but the number of refugees that President Trump has agreed can come into the country this year is about 15% of the number that were allowed to come in 2016. And so it's a crisis that it goes way beyond just Texas. So reaching out to our state government, but also reaching out to their senators and representatives and to the administration federally, and to continue to serve the most marginalized here with us. That is that Governor Abbott mentions the that we're carrying too much of a burden with the migrants on the southern border, with homeless population. He names all of these vulnerable groups as an excuse. And it's important that we speak the truth, that we understand what the circumstances are, that we understand how refugees and immigrants contribute to our economy and to the thriving life. But we have to speak to those. We have to vote. We have to understand the issues.
Yeah, and I'd add to that conversation from his statement that it's the churches and these agencies' decision how we spend our dollars and where we prioritize our resources, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good point, is that he's restricting our ability to do the work to which we believe we've been called as Christians.
Right. So thanks for your thoughts on that. Are there any other issues or challenges you wish people would be paying attention to these days?
Well, I hope that, I think in Texas and in all of our communities in Texas, the continued work of racial reconciliation, and that is building relationships across difference.
Right.
We're in an election year now, and it's imperative that we aren't so polarized that we can't understand and be curious about and listen to those who are different. And those differences are especially, they're almost encouraged by certain people on ethnic and religious lines. So I think that paying attention to the harm that our racial attitudes have caused, and to work to dismantle those and respond in ways that build strength in communities, and continue to live out faithfully our call. Right? You mentioned the kingdom of heaven before, right? That the vision in the book of Revelation of all nations and people and all languages around God's throne. Like, we can live that.
Right.
If we choose, if we will take the risk to understand and be partners with other people across difference.
Right. All right. Anything else you'd like to leave our folks with today? Or let me ask this, anything you'd like to shamelessly plug on behalf of the Episcopal Diocese of Texas?
Absolutely. Two things.
Okay.
Right down the street here is our seminary, the Episcopal Seminary of Southwest, and they have a great pastoral counseling program. We're working to increase the number of people working in mental health across Texas. And if you're looking for a master's program that includes a spiritual component,
Okay.
that's the place to go.
All right.
And then, El Buen Samaritano is doing some great work down in South Austin with our immigrants and migrants. And if you're either looking for English as a second language or other programs like that, or if you want to volunteer, that's the place to go. So great work for the common good.
All right, where can we find more information? Do you remember that offhand, or?
ssw.edu for the seminary, and ebs.org, I think, is El Buen Samaritano.
All right. Hope so. We'll check that and confirm it. Bishop, thank you so much for your time coming in and speaking with us today. But more, thanks for the ministry and work that you're doing each and every day. We certainly appreciate your leadership and all of your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Scott.
All right, friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you can find more information about Texas Impact. You can find the statement that we'll be releasing soon at texasimpact.org. We hope that you'll check that out and make sure you sign, get members of your congregation to sign, and share that widely. And if you've made it this far in the program, you clearly appreciate the work of Texas Impact and the Weekly Witness community. We hope that you join and become a member by going to texasimpact.org/join. Friends, 2020 is going to be a long year. As we mentioned last week, I hope you'll find some time to take care of yourself, take care of others, and let's get the work done this year to help move Texas forward in a positive direction. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, let's get to work.